What were the formative experiences that shaped the man who would become the president of Niger, Ibrahim Baré Maïnassara? Born in the bustling city of Maradi, Niger, on a sunny day of May 9, 1949, Maïnassara's journey was far from ordinary. As a young man, he made a pivotal decision that would set the course for his future. He joined the Nigerian Armed Forces. His dedication, strategic acumen, and leadership skills did not go unnoticed, leading to his rapid rise through the ranks. From a fresh recruit to a respected colonel, Maïnassara's military career was marked by an unyielding resolve and a commanding presence. His ascent was not just a testament to his military prowess, but also a foreshadowing of his future political ambitions. His military prowess was undisputed, but who could have predicted the political storm on the horizon? How did a military officer transition to the role of president overnight? This question leads us to the pivotal event of 1996, when Ibrahim Baré Maïnassara, a decorated colonel in the Nigerian Armed Forces, seized control of Niger in a military coup. The democratically elected president, Mohamed Ousmane, was ousted, and a new era in Niger's political history was ushered in. The 27th of January 1996 marked the day when the rumble of tanks and the marching of soldiers echoed through the streets of Niamey, Niger's capital. The coup was swift, and within hours, the government was in the hands of the military. But this wasn't your typical military takeover. Maïnassara, now at the helm, didn't just want to rule. He wanted to reconcile. In an attempt to bring stability to a nation rocked by the coup, Maïnassara established the National Reconciliation Council. This body, composed of military and civilian representatives, was tasked with governing Niger. The council's name itself was a promise of unity, a promise of healing. But as with any promise, the challenge lay in its fulfillment. Maïnassara's ascent to power wasn't just a shift in leadership, it was a shift in the dynamics of power itself. The man in the military uniform was now the man in the presidential palace. The officer who took orders was now the one giving them, and the soldier who pledged to protect his country was now the one leading it. The coup of 1996 was more than just a change of guard. It was a defining moment in Niger's history that brought a military officer to the forefront of politics. It was a moment that transformed Maïnassara from a soldier to a statesman, from a colonel to a president. Yet as he stood at the helm of power, a new challenge arose. Could he reconcile a nation divided by the coup? Could he lead Niger towards stability and prosperity? With power in his hands, the true test of Maïnassara's leadership began. What happens when a leader's vision for reform meets with resistance at home and abroad? Ibrahim Baré Maïnassara, the military officer turned politician, took the reins of Niger with a promise of economic reform and a hard stance on corruption. His tenure saw a series of changes aimed at jump-starting the economy. He sought to streamline government operations, cut down on red tape and crack down on corruption, which had long been a bane to Niger's development efforts. However, like a coin with two sides, his rule had a darker aspect. While he was implementing economic reforms on one hand, on the other, he was accused of suppressing democratic freedoms. Allegations of human rights abuses began to surface. Voices of dissent were stifled, and political opposition was met with repression. The very democracy he had overthrown to gain power was now being trampled under his rule. The international community looked on with concern as the reports of political repression grew. The promise of a more efficient government was overshadowed by the growing fear of an authoritarian regime. The very people who had initially welcomed the promise of change began to question the cost at which it was being delivered. The world watched as Niger's political landscape became a paradox of progress and regression. Progress in economic reforms and regression in democratic freedoms. The more Maïnassara tightened his grip on power, the more the resistance against his rule grew. The international community, once hopeful for Niger's future under Maïnassara's leadership, began to voice their concerns about the trajectory of his rule. Maïnassara's rule was a complex mixture of economic progress and political repression. His vision of a corruption-free, efficient Niger was met with resistance both at home and abroad. The very reforms that were meant to liberate Niger's economy were being overshadowed by allegations of human rights abuses and political repression. In the face of mounting opposition, Maïnassara's hold on power began to waver. When does dissent become a threat to power? This question is crucial in understanding the challenges and opposition that Ibrahim Maïnassara faced during his rule. As Maïnassara's presidency unfolded, the voices of dissent grew louder and more widespread. His authoritarian rule didn't sit well with many, and opposition started to mount from various quarters. Political parties, once silenced, began to voice their disapproval. But it wasn't just the political parties that were up in arms. Civil society groups, the backbone of any democratic society, also took a stand. These groups, representing a broad spectrum of interests and sectors, decried the repression and lack of democratic freedoms. They rallied their members, organized protests, and used every platform available to them to demand change. The international community was not oblivious to what was happening in Niger. International organizations, always watchful of global human rights and democratic practices, added their voices to the growing chorus of dissent. They issued statements, raised concerns, and in some cases implemented sanctions to pressure Maïnassara's government. Yet, the challenges to Maïnassara's rule weren't confined to external opposition. Internally, there was unrest, a simmering tension that threatened to boil over at any moment. Discontent was rife, and calls for democratic reforms echoed through the streets, the markets, and the homes of Niger. Each challenge, each voice of opposition chipped away at Maïnassara's hold on power. It was a precarious balancing act, maintaining control amid growing opposition and increasing challenges. His rule, once seemingly unshakable, was now on shaky ground. In the face of such mounting opposition, one thing became increasingly clear. Maïnassara's days in power were numbered. The storm clouds were gathering and a tempest of change was on the horizon. As the storm clouds gathered, Maïnassara's days in power were numbered. What can the sudden fall of a leader reveal about the fragile nature of power? The story of Ibrahim Baré Maïnassara came to an abrupt end on April 9, 1999. This day marked the cataclysmic event of Maïnassara's assassination, a coup d'état within a coup. It was during this military upheaval that Major Daouda Malam Wanke, a comrade in arms, emerged as the orchestrator of this deadly plot against Maïnassara. The death of a leader, particularly in such a violent manner, often sends shockwaves through a nation. This was no different for Niger. The abrupt departure of Maïnassara created a vacuum of power, and in its wake, a period of profound political instability ensued. The nation held its breath as it teetered on the precipice of uncertainty. The political structure that Maïnassara had built was now left headless, and the National Reconciliation Council he established found itself in uncharted waters. The governance of the country was left in the hands of those who were once in the shadows, leading to a volatile and unpredictable political climate. But as the dust settled, a glimmer of hope emerged. This unstable period paved the way for a return to democratic governance. The people of Niger, having witnessed the turbulent rule of Maïnassara and the instability that followed his demise, yearned for a more stable democratic rule. The transition wasn't smooth nor was it swift, but it was a necessary journey for the country. It was a testament to the resilience of the people of Niger and their desire for a democratic society. And so, in the wake of assassination and political instability, the country of Niger embarked on a path towards democracy. The story of Maïnassara serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of power, the volatility of military rule, and the enduring spirit of a nation seeking democratic governance. In death, as in life, Maïnassara left a mark on Niger's political landscape. How do we evaluate a leader's legacy when it is marked by controversy and contradictions? This question resonates profoundly when we contemplate the life and rule of Ibrahim Maïnassara. His presidency was a paradoxical blend of commendable economic initiatives and infrastructure development juxtaposed with grave allegations of corruption and human rights violations. On one hand, Maïnassara's focus on economic reforms and his efforts towards modernization are noteworthy. They signal his intent to uplift Niger's status on the global stage. On the other hand, his rule was marred by a dark underbelly of political repression, flagrant human rights abuses, and rampant corruption. His story is emblematic of the complex dynamics of governance in post-colonial African nations, caught in the delicate balance between democratic aspirations and authoritarian tendencies. It underscores the challenges faced by leaders in navigating power struggles, military coups, and transitions between democratic and authoritarian regimes. Ibrahim Baré Maïnassara's life and rule provide a fascinating lens into the struggles of leadership and the quest for power in the modern world.